is the Carisbrook levee and the works that are going on there. And there's a number of questions came in around this one, so I've pulled them all together, I guess, into one sort of big question, and we can just discuss them fairly generally. The general questions were around, what's happening with the Carisbrook levee, and but also it's a bit of interest in the other creek works as well as part of that. So I might just kick this one off, and Karen, who's been with this one right the way through, can perhaps add some bits and pieces as we go, because a lot is in fact happening now with the levee. We are starting to get to the pointy end of this project. It's been a long, frustrating project, and I know everybody's frustrated by this one, including us. But I can say that things have progressed quite a bit since our last listening post. Can say that negotiations with the landholders are now being concluded, and appropriate agreements and documents and licences, etc., all need to be now prepared for signing when we get to that conclusion. It's not just a simple matter of saying, well, we're just simply going to buy some land and that's the end of it. Of course, as a whole, it's much more complex than that, because there's issues around access. There are subdivisions that need to be approved. Access is required to, when we start cutting up properties, etc. There are grazing rights that need to be agreed, and all those sorts of things. So we are very, very close to finalising that. When all those bits and pieces are finalised, and I'm confident that will be probably within the next week or so, the transfers then have to be registered under Section 35 of the Subdivision Act. And so there's quite a complex process that it's not just simply say, hey, we agree on the money, here's the money, now we've got the land, and there's a bit of work to do in that. So also as part of our planning permit, those people who follow this one closely, we do need to lodge some information with the North Central Catchment Management Authority as part of our planning permit. So the detailed design has been reviewed in preparation for that submission to the CMA, and then as part of that also discussions are underway with Big Track and Rural Roads Victoria with regard to the pipes that set underneath the highway and things like that. Those conversations are now taking place and planning is starting to put in place. So that's the process there. I'll come back to the dollars in just a moment. The other major step that I know the community is interested in, the consultants have been engaged to undertake the development of the environmental management plan for the creek within the town boundaries. Not the whole creek, this is within the town boundaries. We are doing a management plan, and consultants are about to undertake that work. It's been slowed down just because of the COVID situation, and we're reviewing the timelines and the project milestones around that. And that work involves a great deal of consultation with the community and various environment groups around the local area in relation to how the creek is managed within the town. And that will form, plan will form the basis for all works on the creek into the future, so we don't have this constant discussion and debate around what's happening and why. Yeah. It will all be concluded as part of that plan. The other one, just to touch on, is the funding. The actual additional cost that we need to complete that work is $1.8 million. That was not entirely a surprise to us. It was always known right from the word go. Even the previous council was aware that there was probably a close, would be a $1 million shortfall that would need to be covered. However, we do have $2.25 million available. The finances around the creek, around the levee and the creek are quite complicated and quite hard to follow because they're going over a number of years and there's a number of different funding sources. But we do have the $2.25 million available right now as just to commence those works. We have received 50% of that money, which we now have. We are holding that money. And the rest of that money is claimed as the works progress. We don't get all that money up front. So that is all in place. Council's entire contribution is in the budget and is budgeted for, but we have some money available, and it's now the balance of our contribution is in this year's budget, so that will be finalised in early August. And then it's the last little piece, which is the two contributions from the state and federal government under the National Disaster Recovery Grants System, I think it's called. Doesn't matter. So that's an agreement which is between the state and federal government. That's the last piece of the puzzle that will be finalised in a couple of weeks, and we're in discussion with government around that one. So a lot of things happening in the background, and no, as you referred to before, we're really disappointed we haven't been able to complete this project before we leave. However, it will be started, and I'm absolutely confident of that, and we are getting very, very close to doing some preparation now for the actual construction work. So watch this space. I think in the next few weeks you'll see some real action happening in that place. Karen, have I missed missed anything around that? You're probably closer.
No, I don't think you have actually, Hugh. No, although I would just comment that the figure that we've got in our budget, I think, does include a carryover amount.
Yep.
So I can't remember the exact figures, but I think it's an 800.
Yep.
In the budget, and I think of that 800, 400 plus is carryover from one of those very funding sources you were talking about. So there was just a bit of a clarification about that. And I think the other thing is that people have informed me that once we get through all of what you've just outlined, the actual building and erecting the levee is actually not going to take very much time, weather of course permitting.
Indeed.
And most people be aware we've already got a large quantity of what we'll need, because the material for the levee is ready pretty much. So once we get all of these other pieces of the puzzle, it shouldn't take very long then to actually erect the levee, which will be great. But I doubt that we will see it before we do leave. So we'll all have to meet back at the levee, I think.
We'll have to come back for the grand opening of the levee or something.
I think we need a grand opening of the levee.
The levee itself, I think, you're right, it's fairly straightforward. It's just simple earthworks. There is the design requirements, I think, that need to be reviewed with some site deviations around some old trees that that's what needed to be approved by the CMA. I guess probably the part that will take the longest is actually the crossing of the highway, and I suspect that will take some time to do. Probably as much time doing that as there would be for the levee itself. But look, that's in the hands of the contractors, and we're confident that we'll see that work happening very, very soon. And I know people are going to say, "Oh, yeah, we've heard all that before," and yes, you have, and so have we. But we're not going to be deterred, and we will continue to work to build that levee to protect the community as soon as we possibly can. Okay, so let's keep